Jazz is full of chromaticism. It's a key ingredient that makes someone truly sound professional when soloing, but often it's incredibly hard to keep track of how to use those chromatic notes in a way that truly makes sense. That's where Barry Harris's genius chromatic scale comes into play. Barry figured out an easy, actionable formula to help you take basic scales and transform them into instant bebop. In this lesson, I'm going to reveal some incredible approaches to using this scale in your improvisation. And to really get every nuance of Barry's scale deeply into your playing, I've made guitar profiles for not only every example in this lesson, but also a bonus etude showing you how to exactly put this concept into action, all available over on my Patreon page. So join me today and let's decode Barry Harris's genius chromatic scale. Let's start with the basic rules of Barry's chromatic scale. This simple formula will work for any scale. Rule number 1. If your scale has a whole step in it, you play the chromatic note in between those two scale tones. Rule number 2. If your scale has a half step, you play the scale tone, then the diatonic note above it before resolving to the next scale tone. If we applied these rules to a C dominant scale, ascending, we would get this. And descending, it's the same rules applied in reverse. You can already hear that this sounds pretty much like instant bebop. The genius here is that this formula makes all the scale tones land consistently on downbeats, and all the chromatic notes naturally fall on upbeats, giving it that classic swing feel. However, there's one small tweak. If you start on an upbeat, the goal is to still ensure that the next chord tone lands on the following downbeat. So you could play either a chromatic note into a scale tone on the downbeat, or a diatonic note moving to the next scale tone before moving on with the chromatic scale. Now that we have these basic rules down, let's talk about some easy and effective ways to use this scale in your improvisations. First, to make this powerful scale immediately actionable, it helps to break it up into small, manageable fragments that you can, here's the big secret, you can link to other ideas like this. What you should practice is moving chord tone to chord tone using this scale. For example, over a C7 chord, we have the chord tones C, E, G, and B flat. We can then move from our first and second chord tone, C to E, using Barry's chromatic scale. Or move from E to G, the third and the fifth, using the same scale. You can do this for every chord tone of any chord. Breaking it down in this way creates easier fragments of information to link together into longer lines. Here, I'm using Barry's chromatic scale to move from C to E, chord tone to chord tone, starting on a downbeat. Then I link it to different arpeggios that we can derive from each chord tone of C7. Here, we get an E half diminished arpeggio if we move up in thirds from E, our third. Then I finish this line by walking down Barry's scale. Now we could apply this same formula off of every chord tone of C7. If we started on E, for example, we would then move from E to G, then go up the arpeggio in thirds from G, which gives us a G minor 7, and then down Barry's chromatic scale. If we started on G, we would get this. how our lines are perfectly chromatic and instantly sound like authentic jazz language. Remember that this powerful formula can be applied over any type of chord. For instance, here's the same thing, but now over C major 7. Again, pretty much instant bebop. So now let's take this concept even further with Barry Harris's family of dominants. If you're not familiar with this concept or want to dig into it further, then check out the video in the corner of this screen. But in a nutshell, the family of dominants tells us that every dominant chord, like C7 that we're playing over now, is harmonically connected with 3 other dominant chords moved in minor thirds via a diminished chord. Knowing that each of these dominant chords can be played over each other, let's apply some of the same formulas we just learned, starting on the root, but now first on C7, then seamlessly transitioning to G flat, its tritone substitution all over C. Amazing, right? Now, how about doing it on C7, then on E flat 7? Barry's methods truly allow us to create these incredible flowing lines. We could also mix things up and start on different chord tones of each of these dominant chords. Here, I did our formula again, starting on the root. But then, on the final note of the phrase D, I then moved it chromatically down to D flat, and then applied our formula now from the 5th of G flat 7, because that's D flat. Try different combinations together and see what kinds of cool lines you can create. The possibilities are endless when you combine Barry's chromatic scale with his family of dominants. Lastly, I want to cover some ways that I have found personally useful in incorporating Barry's chromatic scale into my own lines. These are ways to blend his formula with other concepts that you might already know. Take this line, for example. This is a combination of Barry's scale over C major, then seamlessly linking it to small 5/1 fragments. Here, the 5/1 fragment was this phrase starting off the root of G7. If you have studied Barry's major 6 diminished scale, click the video in the corner of the screen for more information on that. You will know that 5/1 phrases can be played over their tonic chords, which is why this phrase works so well. Here's another line using a similar idea. Here I start by walking up Barry's chromatic scale from the 6th of C. Then I'm thinking of a small 2/5 phrase, first running down the arpeggio of D minor 7 from the flat 7, which of course is C. Then walking down the C major scale until I hit E, the 3rd. Also realize that any of these lines can be extended beautifully with Barry's chromatic scale, like our first line, for example. Or even our second line. As you can see, Barry Harris's chromatic scale provides us with a clear and actionable formula to create instant bebop, a formula that we can either use to generate entire lines or seamlessly link with other lines and concepts that we already know. And this is just the tip of the iceberg for this concept. It goes much deeper. If you would like more content on this or other Barry Harris concepts, then let me know in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching this video about Barry Harris's chromatic scale. Remember that you can pick up the guitar profiles for every example of this lesson, along with a bonus lesson showing you how to apply some of this in a written out etude on my Patreon. Also, on the note of Patreons, I want to give a thanks to those Patreons. Without you guys, none of this is possible, and I truly appreciate your support. Thank you. All right, that's it for today. And until the next time, remember to always keep swinging.